Hello.
Hello.
um, Welcome to NouTalks podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
I just wanted to kick off. Usually, when I have guests on the podcast, I start off by introducing them. But I think that what's proper here is to tell people how we know each other because this is such a personal and intimate podcast that
hmm
every time I have someone over I just tell them how we met. So we're going to start with that. I think I'm going to tell my version of the story
Sure.
because otherwise I think I don't trust I don't trust my guests usually with whatever they're going to tell online. So
Right.
Brahim and I met a few months ago at this podcasting event called Dubai
Surprise,
Podfest that
surprise.
a lot
Yeah.
surprise. It's basically this event, for those who don't know, that basically hosts podcasters from the MENA region, and it's hosted by the Dubai Press Club.
Correct.
And it was in end of September, right?
Yep.
Something like that. It was my second time there, but it was Brahim's first time. So I went there this year. I knew a bunch of people, and it was quite cool. And in one of this year, by the way, also I was in a panel. So I was supposedly going to host this really cool panel. And during that day, I was in the audience, so I took a seat. I don't know if you knew this, Brahim, but they actually assigned seats. I don't know if they assigned your seat.
They did assign my seat. I mean, I was told to sit there. Yeah.
Brahim comes in and says, "Hi, how are you? Can I sit here or whatever, something like that." And then I remember this is something very funny that went into my mind. So you were introducing yourself, and I did not know you because you're new there. And
Yeah.
then you were like, "I do have this podcast, like that I
hmm
started 6 months ago," and me, the elder podcaster, I was like, "Oh, really cool. How's that going for you?" And then suddenly, and I just want to make sure everyone knows this online, but he was so humble about his podcast, and he was like, "Oh, I'm a newbie, and I just started, and I have this marketing advertising podcast, and it's my first time." And then few minutes later, he gets called to stage to be a panelist, which I was like, "What? How is he here for the first time and is already a panelist?" So that was something very important to mention on the first time I interacted with Brahim, just so you get an idea of his personality. And I remember something very interesting. And this is where I think this is like a topic you should tell us about later. But Brahim, so as you understood, is a podcaster, has a podcast called Below the Fold that he started, I guess, now. How many months is it now? More than 6 months, right?
It's been around 6, 7 months. Yeah.
6, 7 months. And it's basically the first marketing and advertising podcast in the MENA region. And I remember someone said it's one of the most advertised podcasts in
Yeah.
the MENA.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really cool. Look at
Yeah.
that. And also, something very important about Brahim, he's not only a podcaster, but he is a hotshot business director at a media agency based in Dubai, right?
Correct.
For how long have you been working in advertising, by the way? I never knew.
It's been a while, actually. It's been 14 years now.
Wow. 14
Yeah.
years. We have so much
Yeah.
to learn from you, Ibrahim, today. I can feel it. I can sense
I
it.
I hope so. I hope I can give you a few insights, just a
Love
few at least.
that.
With
Yeah,
14
well,
years experience, I mean, I hope I can be
14 years.
useful somehow.
I think it's significant experience from my perspective. But yeah, so Brahim, a media ad man, also a podcaster, something very important for this cultural podcast. So you are both Lebanese and Palestinian.
Correct. My dad's Lebanese, my mom's Palestinian. I would say from the Levant area. That's how I look at it. My parents were living in Lebanon, and well, they met in Lebanon, even though they went to the same university around the same time. Um, they met at work, and yeah, they basically, got married. Uh, brought me and my sisters to life, and just a few years later, we moved to Athens. Yeah, I've never been to Palestine, unfortunately, but yeah, I was born in Beirut.
Okay, well, that's a really good transition, Brahim, because I wanted to ask you a bit more about your background and your childhood, because something so interesting that I really, really love when I talk to people on this podcast is, just understanding a bit how life was like for them growing up and until you got here, right? So, tell me something about the city you were born in. Did you live there a bit before you moved to Europe?
We moved to Europe when I was 2 years old, when I was just two. So I'm not sure if you would count this as living, but yeah, I was very small.
So, you speak Greek.
I would say I speak Greek. I don't speak as fluent as I used to because I left Greece in 2005. Gosh, that's like 20 years ago now. And unfortunately, there weren't many Greeks that I guess I had around me when after I left. Because I went then to Beirut and I did my studies there, and obviously there are not too many Greeks in Beirut, and then I went to Saudi Arabia after that. And so, yeah, I couldn't practice the language, so
You lost it.
I lost it a little bit, but I do speak fluently, so I still have the accent.
It's really interesting to me that you grew up in Athens. I don't think I know anyone who does. So I'm curious to know a bit what your input is about Athens. Like, how was it, living there? Is it a bit similar to, I don't know, the rest of Europe? Or is there any specificities that you can tell me about? Something you remember?
So I wouldn't say it's similar to Europe. I mean, Europe has a lot of diverse cultures. I would say Greece is more it would definitely be counted as a Mediterranean country, right? It's the entirety of Greece is like in the sea. It's what we would call in French a presqu'île. Just to close on how Greece is different from other European countries, Greece is maybe a little bit more family oriented, maybe as opposed to other countries. So people value family time, um, and also are maybe also more religious.
Was there anything now that actually you still, I don't know, maybe a value, a memory, something about you that you've taken from the culture, like from the Greek culture?
Something that I took from Greece that I felt was um, special, that I appreciated, is their attachment to their culture and their language. So I'll explain to you. Basically, a way to explain it, I suppose, is I went to a French school, and we studied in French. We studied all the subjects in French, and we spoke French, right? Because it's a French school. Obviously, we had to understand the subject, so we have to speak French. But outside of school, no one would speak French. Everyone would speak Greek. Um,
Okay.
Even French, had to speak Greek because there is an attachment to Greek language and Greek culture, and there's so much pride, in this language and culture. People wanted to be part of it, and they would therefore speak it. And if you spoke anything else but Greek, it meant that you are undermining the Greek culture and Greek
Oh,
language.
wow.
You're in Greece, so you have to do like the Greeks.
I love that.
Same as
Yeah.
our neighbors, right? If you're in Rome, you do like a
Yeah,
Roman.
exactly. 100%, especially in the coffee drinking and food.
Yeah, which I'm not saying that it isn't something that is recurring in other countries, But when I went to Lebanon after Greece, I didn't find the same sort of attachment to the local culture and the local language. I didn't find people uh, speaking Arabic or Lebanese outside of American universities or French schools.
Most people spoke like three languages. I think they still do in Lebanon. No?
Yeah, they still do. So you'll find French students speak French outside of school, or American school students they would speak English outside of school. So being exposed to that, I really appreciated how in Greece, you know, we were more, I guess, respectful to the culture or appreciative of the culture and language and made an effort to speak the local language, so we gave it importance, we gave it value. And I felt it's because of the pride that people have there, in Greece. It kind of forces you to respect that pride, and speak the language, which I felt was missing in Lebanon, in Beirut.
I love that. Actually, it's not, I don't think it's just Lebanon. I feel like it's quite a MENA thing. For example, even Morocco, it's kind of the same. You know what I mean? A lot of people speak just French, French outside. And also, I think in France, there's a bit that they're just like, you're in France, speak French. You know what I mean? And I think foreigners make an effort to learn the local language, but even like if foreigners, let's say, come to Lebanon or the UAE or whatever country, they don't necessarily learn Arabic. It's not the contrary. And I love that in Greece, it's totally like learn Latin or don't talk to me, you know?
You make a good point. Yeah.
So you did live there until you were 18 and then you moved to school in Lebanon, right? You tell me about that. Did you go to university? Like what did you study?
Yeah. I have to admit I didn't do much studying. I mean, I did
Oh.
study. I had to towards the end. So I majored in business administration. I took two emphasis subjects, which were accounting and finance.
Accounting and finance. Hold on. How did you go from accounting and finance to advertising?
That's a good question. Actually, if you ask a lot of people that work in advertising have gotten into advertising by accident. Advertising wasn't normally a part of syllabus or wasn't a major. I think 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Um, it was just maybe 10 years ago that they started introducing media advertising. For me, in my case, I I was obviously fond of accounting, arithmetics, numbers, and finance. Um, but after I graduated, I couldn't find a job. I'm not sure if because I was really bad at interviews, or maybe because it was 2010 and we were just out of the world had just went through a financial crisis, and there was maybe a surplus or of financial analysts or talents in the finance industry, and no one was hiring in finance. And so one day I get this opportunity to take on this entry level job at this advertising agency. And I said to myself, you know what? I took a few actually marketing classes in university, and I enjoyed them a little bit. I thought they kind of appealed to my creative side, a little bit away from the rigidity maybe of accounting and finance, and maybe let me explore that, because I do have a sort of a creative side or artistic side. Um, that I inherited growing up in Greece and trying to be a graffiti artist. And I felt that I could explore that side. And yeah, I took the job, and the rest is history.
Okay, wow. All right. Going from like, it's actually really funny because I did accounting too in high school, but then I didn't major in that, and business school. I've never really, rarely saw people that went from accounting to advertising. Usually they would go into like, I don't know, other things like consulting or like maximum brand management, but it's like rarely advertising. It's usually the creative kids. But as you just said, you're like a creative soul. But that's so interesting. I want to understand though. So you did your school in Lebanon, and did you work there or did you move to the GCC right after?
Yeah, no, I moved right after. It didn't make sense to turn down offers from the GCC, given how much higher of a salary, and an income, they were offering compared to jobs in Beirut, and also given how much my parents had invested in university and how much university cost. It just didn't make sense to continue working in Lebanon and turning down high paid income in GCC. Um, a lot of kids, leave Lebanon, especially those that you go to big universities. I think the percentage at my time was like 85%. 85% of students in Lebanon, would go to work abroad. They go then, and most of them go to the GCC.
I get that. And one thing about this, which is basically like brain drain, let's say, do you think there's a way to get over that right now in the current situation, like in today's time, I guess 2025? Is there anything you think that would change that, like that would make people stay in Lebanon?
Uh, yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely a number of things um, that could happen that would change that. I think, well, first and foremost, safety, right? Security, stability, right, in the country for people to actually want to stay. Um, the second thing I would say, growth and prosperity. Being able to take on a job, um, get promoted. Maybe the company is able to generate more revenue and grow income, and therefore reward its employees. Um, it would still be hard to compete with the markets, like the UAE and Saudi Arabia. But I think the country has a lot of potential. I would say also, if there was less corruption, and if it was a fair market, fair play, whereby even as an entrepreneur, you have a good chance of succeeding if you have a good product. Yeah, I think people would stay if Lebanese are given the opportunity to grow beyond Lebanon, to grow their businesses beyond Lebanon. I think that would be big as well.
I'm thinking about Lebanese exported products. Now I'm just like, on top of mind, and I'm trying to think about, like a brand or like a really famous, besides culinary experiences like hospitality, food and restaurants and things like that. Like, I think I don't know. Do you know a brand? Like, I don't know. I'm like really curious to know. Like like a brand that was able to export itself.
Uh, a brand that was able to export itself. So you have Fine, which is the napkin.
It's Lebanese? Wait, hold on. Wait, Fine is a Lebanese brand?
Sorry, it's not Fine. It's Sanita. Fine might be Lebanese too, but Sanita, that's the one that's Lebanese.
I love how you're researching this in midst the podcast.
Yeah, why not? I mean, we're online, right? Might as well.
You're right.
So it's not always related to, it's not always consumer products, but you have a lot of Lebanese, for example, that are thriving in different areas in categories. Like, for example, Elisab.
Elisab, of course, is definitely one of my favorite designers of all time. Also has like a crazy inspiring story. But there's also a second Lebanese designer, actually. They're very, very famous in fashion. What is he called? There's a second one. Well, I forgot. I'll
In
remember
fashion,
eventually. In fashion,
Zuhair,
very famous. Zuhair Murad.
Zuhair
Yes.
Murad. Yeah.
Yes. I think they also maybe were able to thrive once they moved abroad. What do you think about that?
I think a lot of Lebanese thrive when they move abroad. I mean, one example is Carlos Hosam, for example. Find a lot of Lebanese in top ranking roles. Yes, you have a comment on that?
Not on this platform. Well, I mean, thank you for sharing these because I think it's so important to highlight all these stories. When you move to the GCC, I'm pretty sure you've met like a huge community of Lebanese expats and Lebanese professionals. I haven't I haven't lived in the GCC, but I know that once I visited and I go into like events and things like that, I'll have to find someone from Lebanon there that are doing incredible work, or they're like in some senior position, etc. um I just want to know from you, when you moved to the GCC, like, did you automatically connect with, the Lebanese community? Or was it, just like like a different dynamic, or just people that were born there, or most of them just went there to find a job?
I connected with, obviously, I connected with all Lebanese that with whom I had similar background. So even when I went to Lebanon, I couldn't connect with all Lebanese because I grew up in Athens. I'm used to European culture. We were deep into growing up. We were deep into the hip hop movement. We liked to listen to hip hop. We liked graffiti. We liked anything related to street art. We liked skateboarding. And when I went to Beirut, it wasn't as developed. Not a lot of people knew listened to hip hop. Most people listen to I guess Western music, but mainstream music or Arabic.
Who is your favorite artist? Hip hop artist.
Hip hop artist. Oh boy, right now.
Before and now.
So okay, so I grew up listening to I Am. So the first rap band that I listened to, and I listened to for a while was I Am. I don't know if you're familiar with the rap band, but it's a famous French.
Don't come after me, but I don't know them.
Oh my God. I don't know if I should feel old or or maybe they're not popular anymore.
I was not into hip hop growing up, so that's maybe why. It's just a genre. I just knew the mainstream ones, but do you still listen to hip hop and do graffiti?
Yeah, no, I don't do graffiti anymore, but I listen to hip hop. I like all kinds of music, but I mean now I listen to I like Mac Miller, Kendrick Lamar. I still listen to some French rap also, of course.
Just interesting to know that a lot of people, listen to French rap outside of France.
Yeah, I mean Greek rap wasn't too big, wasn't great at the time. Also, we had to resort to the next best thing. And so I was telling you, even though there were Lebanese in the GCC, I didn't connect with every Lebanese that I met. Didn't or let me actually simplify this. I connected with Lebanese that didn't necessarily wanted to uh, smoke argile 24/7.
Wait. I have a question. I have a cultural question, if I may. What is that? Is it shisha?
Isha, yeah.
Okay.
No, I was gonna say I feel like a big portion of Lebanese love to just chill and smoke shisha. I mean, this would be their sort of, activity. And so I couldn't relate to that. If a Lebanese likes to do sports, we find things in common, like sports, for example, or football, we would definitely connect. If they would, know about, certain music genres that I like, we would connect. If we follow same shows, for example, anything in common, we would connect, right? But you can imagine the uh, the peculiarity of someone that's coming of interest of someone that's coming from Greece and Athens, right? And how maybe I would find less things in common with a typical Lebanese. But I mean, I think sports. Now that I mentioned football, sports was a big denominator for me in how I connected with other expats in GCC.
I've always been curious about this expat lifestyle. You answered some of it by saying that you didn't automatically connect to just Lebanese people. But I just want to understand, is it a lot of, do you feel like a lot of expats just stay between them nationality wise? Like if it's a French person, then they'll have their French community, and then the Lebanese people, they'll just go be together, and the Moroccans. Do you really feel that in the GCC, now that you've lived there for, I guess, over 10 years? Or do you feel like we're getting out of that?
I feel like the Lebanese and Palestinians and Syrians do like and Jordanians, they could hang out. Maybe other nationalities, maybe they do sort of uh, not mix. They don't mix. What's that expression? Birds from the same.
Pond.
Can you finish?
I don't know.
Pond?
I don't know. Is it pond? I'm
Birds,
just guessing.
birds.
I'm just
I
guessing.
know it. So birds from the same feather flock together.
Oh, good job. Wow. I actually know it.
Yeah, I know you know it. So yeah, different expat communities or people from the same origin or same ethnicity, they do hang out together, obviously, because they'll find more things in common. But it doesn't mean that, they wouldn't hang out uh, with other expats. I think maybe you'll find that Lebanese are more frequently hanging out with maybe Europeans. If you go to a European group, you tend to find most likely as Arab Lebanese people, as opposed to maybe other nationalities.
What I want to also understand from your end, because of course I do know that each country will, like each nationalities will hang out together, obviously, because of, also the language, the dialect. I know I find it really hard if I speak Moroccan to Darija to like you, then you'll not understand me. So obviously there's like always like a language block as well, even in Arabic dialects. Um, but Brahim, you've spent, correct me if I'm wrong, so you spent 10 years in Saudi Arabia, and then how many years are you in Dubai for?
So I spent 11 years in Saudi Arabia. Don't take a year away, please. And I spent almost 3 years now in Dubai. In May, in just a couple months, it'll be 3 years here.
Okay. Um, and these, so all of this, which is basically like what, like 14 years, is work experience. So you've been working in advertising this whole time. I just want you to kind of like tell me a little bit about your job. Like, what have you been, working on? What is your, like, what are your key missions? Like, what do you do? Just for anyone who does not, who's not from the background and they just want to understand a bit about your job.
Um, so look, in advertising, there are two main areas or functions that are needed needed, or two um, big sets of skills that are needed to get an advertisement or a campaign live, right? Or get an advertisement to be broadcasted. The first area or group of people are responsible for creating the advertisement, whether it's a 30-second video or TV spot or a 2-minute online video, or maybe it's the banner ad. Maybe it's like a print ad, whereby they would need to uh, do a photo shoot. So these are the creative people, right? They basically come up with the communication strategy, um, the idea. They'll come up with the storyboard. They'll come up with the messaging. They'll come up with the content. They'll produce the content, right? And they'll basically also, do that for big brands, or big brands would have these people sit in house as well, right? Um, and these are also like specialized creative agencies. Um, and on the other hand, you have another set of advertising experts who are responsible for choosing the channels, and also making sure and distributing the ads in the right media placements or media channels to reach a maximum amount of people, right? And these are basically the media planners, right? So on one hand, you have the creative teams, and who are in charge of producing the advertisements. And on the other hand, you have the media experts. I work in media, so my job's been to basically plan where should ads appear, and advise clients on whether they should place their ads on TV or on out of home, or on on Meta, on Facebook, on Instagram, or on X, um, and to basically also drive maximum impact. So while the creative people or agencies or teams, their jobs are more subjective, there's more art, there's more maybe depth, you know. Our job is very scientific. There are a lot of numbers. We use a lot of data. There's a lot of technology also, nowadays, with, the penetration of, the internet, the growth of the internet, the penetration of social media, with how much also brands are spending on digital. Today they're spending between 60 to 80% of their budget on digital media. So there's a lot of technology, and a lot of data science as well that goes into play in order to drive maximum impact. Yeah, I don't know if I explained it very well, but yeah, I'm on the media side, I guess, of advertising.
From someone who comes from marketing and advertising as well, I'll say that was a very clear explanation, because I'm in the content side and you're in the media side. So we have the two. But I'm not in advertising, but I'm in brands. So it kind of counts as content. But what I want to know from this, Brahim, which is, like, you work in media, so you try to find the right channels for your clients, right, where they can get visibility and get maximum return on investment, etc. You've been doing this for quite some time, in the MENA region. What I want to know from you is, like, how do you feel like the MENA region is different or evolving in the media industry?
So it's a very particular region, and unique region, I would say, compared to others. Um, while things like internet penetration and social media penetration here in MENA is one of the highest in the world. Like when you look at the number of daily active users, for example, on YouTube, or the daily viewership on YouTube, I believe it's one of the highest in the world. If you look at the engagement rates that come out of countries like Saudi Arabia, it's also one of the highest in the world. Um, if you look at the penetration of platforms like Snapchat, for example, against audiences like Gen Z, also it's one of the highest in the world. So you have a lot of engagement that's happening on digital media, but on the other hand, you don't have the same development and agility and new cutting edge advertising technology that rolls out in other more developed, I guess, regions or markets like the US or the UK or Europe. So when we want to bring to our clients new ad tech, for example, new innovative solutions, we generally wait until they are rolled out in Western markets before they are made available in the region here. So obviously these come from companies that are predominantly based out of the US or EU, such as Meta or Google. They test these products and roll them out abroad before bringing them here. And we're trying to change that. So we're always trying to push these partners to bring us new innovative solutions, and start testing out in our market because we have the engagement, we have the penetration. But yeah, it's from that aspect, I would say this is one of the things that this region is different from the rest of the region.
That's quite an interesting point, because I've had this conversation with one of my colleagues this week because I'm trying to get my clients that are in the African continent. It's not GCC, but it's emerging markets, and I wanted to create like this whole media campaign, right, on TikTok for one of the West African countries, and we're unable to, literally, I'm not even kidding you, we're unable to get hold of someone on TikTok that works for Sub-Saharan Africa. There's literally no one
Hmm.
that works at TikTok that oversees Sub-Saharan Africa because it's not important for them. But it's interesting that you're saying that for the GCC and for MENA in general. So there's like less, I think, focus from these big companies on the region, but it is one of the most performing regions. You know what I mean? And on that,
Yeah.
on that note, there's something that I wanted to also get your point of view on is, with all that, right? With all these challenges that, the MENA region, faces as well. Like, how do you see it evolve? Where do you see the media landscape going? Like, you can give me one or two things that you think, or just one thing, yeah, that you see gonna boom in the future.
Yeah, I think with this delay, the delay and the availability of ad products that comes that should come from these big partners is a big opportunity for local players to present and bring new ways to engage with audiences for brands to engage with audiences. So you see a lot of startups in the ad tech space now, sort of appearing. There was this influencer startup that was just awarded $6 million in seed funding. It just a week ago, I think, or a few days ago. So there's a big opportunity while I guess Silicon Valley is not really paying attention to the region here, and rightfully so, right? They already have a massive market. The U.S. They have 350 million people over there. That they could focus on. Um, there's a big opportunity for tech startups to invest and develop something that is unique for the region, and access the ad spend, streamline the ad spend towards their businesses.
Something I think interesting about your point of view is that you're at the same time like work in the media, as like a business director. So you see all these big accounts, of course, that you work with, and big companies on how they're spending, right, their money and looking for visibility. And you really have this technical point of view as well, I feel like, this business side, but you're also a content creator, right? Which is the other, like a vision of your work as a podcaster. So you do, you do work on the media planning for these big companies and corporations in the MENA region, but at the same time, you create your own content that you put out there. I believe for the MENA region, that's from your podcast Below the Fold. What I want to understand now from this second point of view, which is from your podcast, is like what challenges did you face launching this this really awesome podcast a few months ago, just took a plunge. I want to You said that because you were in a podcast you decided to launch your own, but I want to know what the behind story is of launching this podcast, and like how did it come about, or like was it also challenging to just jump into something like that in the region?
Honestly, um, I would say there are challenge. There were things that were challenging, but there were also things that made it easier.
Mm,
So one of some of the challenges were maybe around how to manage this content creation and podcast while working a 9 to 5. Maybe as opposed to, I guess, Western markets, it's not really a 9 to 5 here. It's beyond the 9 to 5. People work overtime here. Some
agreed.
clients don't always, respect, after our work-life balance. Um, so 9 to 5s, let alone advertising, are quite overwhelming. So being able to, do a good job, at my 9 to 5, and also, we'll run a podcast, create time to record, edit, manage guests, speakers, organize posts, come up with the right, I guess, discussion points. So there's obviously, you would know, right? So there's a lot that goes into podcasting. So that I would say in itself is a challenge, because also you podcasting isn't yet, at least, a a sustainable single source of income, right? Unless you're a Joe Rogan or Anas Bukhash, from the region here, I suppose. You cannot. It's still not uh, enough, to live off a podcast. At least a couple months old podcast. So that's I guess is challenge number one. However, one of the things that made it maybe easier is AI tools. So thanks to AI, I'm able to create um, social media content of my podcast very quickly and efficiently. So it doesn't take me as much time as it would take a podcaster, I guess, 5 years ago. So it did help me, create a lot of shortcuts. Also, another thing that's helped me is um, these big freelance networks, right? That gave me access to talent, at a good cost, from different parts of the world. So, or it gave me access to a talent pool, whereby I managed to get support at a cost that, didn't, drive me broke at the end of the month. Not yet, at least. But yeah, these, I guess, were challenges and, I guess, sensitivities that,
Mm.
take into account, I suppose, or have helped me run this podcast.
I relate to a lot of what you said as a podcaster, especially the non-existent 9 to 5. But so your podcast is about marketing and advertising, but I just want to take like a minute for you to tell me or tell the audience that are listening about, like, what is the purpose of your podcast? Like, why did you start it? Is there a specific goal that you want to achieve through this podcast?
I started this podcast because I wanted to make use of my experience and my, I guess, expertise in digital media, and I wanted to create content, that I felt would be useful for the broader industry. And yeah, I had thought about other different topics to cover in a podcast, but I felt this would make more sense, especially also given my network in this industry. I already have access to plenty of potential guests and speakers. It was pretty easy for me to find guests to jump on the podcast, right? And also from another, I guess, perspective, I also wanted to do something outside my 9 to 5, right? What it was exactly, I wasn't too sure. I was trying different things prior to this podcast, and I'm still planning on doing other things. I do feel like I want to do more than just the podcast, of course, but for now, the podcast is taking a lot of time. Um, but yeah, I mean, it is motivating for me to be able to share critical thinking and an analysis and thought leadership about, a very, I guess, interesting and uh, underrated subject in marketing, which is digital media, which is performance marketing, which is marketing technology, all these things that, are not as, I guess, maybe spoken about here in the region, right? Or not as analyzed. Yeah, I mean there are a lot of marketing podcasts, obviously, across, coming from different, countries and markets that people listen to, but there isn't one that is in English that is out of the MENA, that brings in guests from here, from the industry, that have a lot to say, that have a lot of really interesting input.
That's actually true. And I just want to know, I don't know if you don't have to answer this, but do you have so far a favorite podcast episode from all the ones you've done so far?
Uh,
It's hard to choose between your kids.
it wouldn't be nice to my other guests. I will tell you which one I felt more passionate about and loved more, I guess. But I would tell you that also from every guest I learned something. I learned one or two things that were very, very useful. Um, but the one that I felt more passionate about and that I appreciated a lot was the one on data with a guy called Basil, who basically is in charge of data science at Digitas agency, who's a brilliant guy, knows his stuff, And yeah, I mean, the podcast was about decision making and the role of data in decision making, and we spoke about spectrum that is comprised of instinct, human instinct, and in the middle you'll find common sense, and then at the other end of the spectrum you have data and AI, and how these three things, influence decision, and when is the right time to use instinct, when is the right time to use common sense, and when is the right time to use data or AI. And it was just fascinating. And after this podcast, it just made a lot of sense. And it felt easier to not always rely on data or to move on with life without access to data, because you don't always have access to data, right? Especially for someone that works in digital media that relies heavily on data, right? We're always told to be data driven, to always, inform our decisions with insights, with data points. But yeah, it was refreshing to have a different view, or maybe an outlet, let's say, to take a decision without relying heavily on data. And so I felt that episode was very special.
I love that. This is such an interesting, I guess, decision making view, like instinct, human logic, and data. I don't really thought about it like that, but I think I've heard the first part of this episode, but I didn't get to this, so I'll have to go back. I'll have to go back and listen to it. But it's such a good point, like a good insight. I want to ask you about what's next, either for your podcast or, your outside plans, like your next maybe career step. Is there anything you're looking forward to?
So there are, I guess, aspirations that I want to follow in the next, weeks or months. I did set for myself goals. So whether at a career level, at a 9 to 5 level, or also for the podcast. And I'll start at a career level. I'm moving away from agencies. I'm gonna be working tech side, probably in a few weeks from now.
Hold on, is this a reveal?
Yeah, it's pretty new. So I'm gonna try something else from my 9 to 5. I think it'll be interesting, and it'll be beneficial for my growth, and I look forward to that. And obviously, I've set to myself objectives and goals to make sure that I benefit as much as possible, from this move. So I do plan on making the most of it, learning as much as I can, and yeah, I guess develop my skill set, develop myself, widen my experience, widen my scope. I don't know what other junk fluff I can throw in there, but yeah, I guess you get the gist. That's on the 9 to 5. Um, from a podcast perspective, there are certainly, a number of steps that I want to follow to grow the podcast. So one is changing the format a little bit. So moving away from a long format, conversational format, to shorter durations, and also maybe bring in a different engagement format. So moving away from the interview conversational format to a more engaging two-way, three-way sort of a conversation. Um, the other, I guess, changes that I want to follow for the podcast are, I guess, taking the social media content to the next level. So, try to diversify from just snippets from the show, from the podcast, or from the recording, to including more um more diversified content. So maybe not necessarily from the recording, but maybe include um, I don't know, news on related to digital media, maybe, questions, polls, engaging formats to help engage with the audience more, get them more involved in the podcast, right? Maybe get their input on, the next recording, tell them about it, maybe get questions from them. Yeah, just drive more engagement, right, on social
Okay.
media. Um, and third is try to expand beyond podcast, like use the content that I'm creating from the podcast to maybe develop like an online magazine related to digital marketing. Um,
Ooh,
so that's in the pipeline. This is very exclusive stuff that I'm
I
giving you,
love this.
and very yeah. That's the plan. Also, yeah, this is dependent on, just a big caveat, right? This is dependent on the time that I have, that I'm able
Yeah,
to allocate in order to make all these changes, right?
for sure.
There's obviously a more time required for me to make all these changes. Um, I may need to, bring in a partner so that, we can raise more funds in order to support all these
Mhm.
aspirations. But yeah, definitely next steps in the horizon, I would say.
Wow, these are fabulous aspirations. This is so cool. I'm really excited. You should tell me all about this after because I have so many other questions. But I know since they're all new, they're all new, hot news. We can, deep dive into the details. But this is really, really exciting. And I'm so excited to, see the next steps both for your career and what you bring into the podcast for sure, and all the diversifications because, I feel like there's so much need in the region for content made in like from the region for the region, which I'm absolutely passionate about. Hence this whole podcast. So it's really, really interesting, and I'm so excited for the next step. And I know we're running out of time, but I want to kind of like wrap up into some rapid fire questions for you. I'm going to start with one that a lot of people ask. Probably got this all the time. Is Dubai overrated?
Is it overrated from what aspect? Because people may look at Dubai as a place to enjoy a luxurious life. From that aspect, or it's not overrated. It's true. There's a lot of luxury. I guess things happening here. There are luxury restaurants, there are luxury events. If you mean if whether Dubai is overrated, if when it comes to starting your own business, I would say no, it's not. It's also not overrated because you could also come here and start a business, and if your idea and your product your plan are good, you will secure the funding. There's absolutely no discrimination on whether you come from a certain background or a certain nationality. If you have a good idea and and a good plan and a good team, you'll get the funding and the support that you need. So from that aspect, also it's not overrated. So this is why I wanted to understand a little bit more from what aspect you meant it was overrated.
I think you answered perfectly because my idea also is to see the different topics that you'd go to because I know for sure that Dubai is such a wild destination and everyone talks about, and it's we think it's I feel like it's kind of like before we had like the American New York dream, and now we have like the Dubai GCC dream, where a lot of people like go to find jobs and opportunities. And I think you answered it perfectly in the sense that you can find anything you want in Dubai, pretty much according to whatever you're looking for. So that's such an interesting, I guess, take on it. Second question, you've talked about this earlier. Is it possible to start a side kick or a side hustle whilst having, I'm not going to call it 9 to 5. I'll say 5 to 9, more like it. So for you, I I guess yes, but how do you do it? Is there any secret sauce that anyone needs to know about?
Well, first of all, yes, it's possible. Uh, I would definitely say it needs discipline. Um, Obviously, you would need to have the will to work beyond your 9 to 5, right? So you have your 9 to 5, and then once you're done with your 9 to 5, you will have 3, 4 hours, maybe less, during the day before you need to sleep. And take into account that you have errands to run, you might want to squeeze in a little workout, because, you want to stay sharp. And I think this is one of the, um, I guess, secrets or ways to, to keep up and develop the discipline is to also train. I felt like from my end, maintaining a healthy lifestyle helped me cope with the focus that I needed to work beyond my 9 to 5, right? And the, I guess, the energy that I needed to, run all these tasks and errands and tedious, maybe, jobs that I needed to get done in order to get this podcast up and running, right? Um, so discipline, staying healthy, I guess training, spending that stress, making sure that you deflate, I guess, from whatever you would accumulate from a 9 to 5, so that you can deal with a, side hustle. Um, another thing, maybe another element that has helped me is I don't, maybe it's debatable, but for me, I don't do nightlife. I don't, drink. I don't party. And when we get to the weekend, I just have a lot of time to spend, on the side hustle, and I don't
Such a
and I
good
don't
point.
waste any time. Yeah, I don't waste any time, having to deal with a hangover, for example. And
Mm,
I sleep well during the weekend, and therefore I sleep well during the week, and I have energy. I have all the energy that I need to deal with my 9 to 5 and the side hustle. And because of that, I also wake up very early in the morning, every day, and sometimes I'm able to squeeze in some work before my 9 to 5. So yeah, I guess maybe these things have
yeah.
helped me.
Wow. I
Not
think these
That's
are
not to say that it's impossible to do it without these things, but yeah, these are the things that have helped me. Yeah.
this is something that the audience needs to know. Like the listeners, they need to know about you. You are really big on sports, and I really respect that. I think you do work out every day, right? Every morning early. It's like the dream.
Yeah, I sometimes work out twice a day. Sometimes I feel like I need to slow down, my training so that I can make more time for my side hustle. But they're going hand in hand, I suppose.
I think this is really like this is something I'm trying to get into. This is quite recent for me, like a recent lifestyle development, which is sports. I think a lot of people would relate to this. We're not all born into like a sportsy family, or like we're used to it. Like we kind of force ourselves to, be more, move more, go to the gym, or like pick up a sport, etc. And there's something I'm getting into. And I think your point is so right, because when you squeeze in like workouts into your daily schedule, it's kind of helps you be more disciplined or organize yourself more. I'm still getting into this. I don't know if it's going to last, but I just wanted to kind of like emphasize that because it kind of like I feel like it's working. So I don't know. I'll keep you posted.
You know something? I think that anyway, if you think about it quickly on this one before we move to the next rapid fire question, I don't know if we should call it rapid fire anyways anymore. No, you know, being active makes you content, right? Ultimately, it makes you feel nice, you know, feel positive. Um, and when you're content, you produce more. Your productivity is higher. So yeah, I guess that's the link.
I love a science-backed advice. Um
Yeah, it's,
love that. Definitely. I think I should plan a whole like sports and workout episode. But you're right, you're right. This is a good point. One last thing, one last question and when and then we're going to wrap this up. This is something I always think about, and I get a lot of questions on my podcast. And a lot of people that listen to New Talks podcast are quite young. So it's a lot of people who are at school and, they're still struggling to figure their life out, right? And they're always asking me advice about this. Like, how do you know this is the right career for you or the right, I don't know, like major or school or whatever. And so I just wanted to see your very wise perspective on this topic. And just to twist it a bit, what I would ask you is, one, did you like have always imagined your life, how your life was going to be like when you were younger? And if you had any advice to your younger self, what would it be?
I mean, I've of course had um, always imagined what would my life would be like growing up. You know, I think a lot of kids do that. A lot of kids, you know, spend time thinking about what would they be like when they grow up, right? And I am no different from any other kid. And did it turn out like I had imagined? I think it's still early to say. You know, I think
You're still
I still have
young.
a couple of decades before I decide if whether it has or not, right? Um, I think it turned out all right. Um, I did picture myself or imagine myself working, you know, at a big corporation, you know, having a really good, you know, high paying job. Not that I have a high paying job now, but, um, you know, I guess, uh, you know, we're on the right track, I suppose.
You are 100%.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to stay humble here.
As always, nothing surprising, nothing new there.
Nothing new, you know. When I was maybe younger, much younger, I did imagine I would invent things. But you know, as you grow up, your dreams become more and more pragmatic and more realistic. So I guess maybe from an invention or creation perspective, there's some, you know, movement happening. I am a creator somehow, right? A content creator,
Yeah.
you know. So still a creator. And I hope to develop more things as I you know grow up, you know, beyond just a podcast. Um, and yeah, I mean, look, it's very important for me that I always remain content and grateful with where I am. So I don't always think about, you know, what did I dream of growing up and if whether I've become that person or not. I don't really spend time thinking like that. I'm very happy and grateful with where I am. And I would definitely tell myself, my younger self, and any young kid out there that, you know, it's going to be fine. It's going to be all right. You know, just work hard, put your heart into it, do your best, respect others, respect, you know, elders, respect younger people, be good, be kind, and you'll make it, you know. And whether it turns out to be what you want it to be or anything else, you'll be happy knowing at least that you've done your best. Um, and so yeah, I would say the same to myself. I would, try to maybe advise them to study better, study harder. It doesn't hurt to be a bookworm. It's all
To be
right
a
to tell
nerd.
your friends no to be a nerd. Yes, try to get into a good school. Try to study a complex subject. Do pursue an academic uh, career. And if you don't, it's fine. At least, try your best with whatever you can control. So, yeah, I think this would be my advice.
100% agree. This is such good advice.
Great.
You're the one who you told me once that you don't take advice, but you do give very good advice. I have to tell you that. But
I
yeah, this
have,
is
I don't
this
remember.
yeah. In the short-lived conversations we've had, you've told me that. I remember, but this was
uh,
so interesting and such a fun conversation, Brahim. Thank you so much for joining me on this talk.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
Everyone listening, you can check out Ibrahim's podcast below the fold. I'll link everything on social media so you can check his journey out and follow up on everything he said. So we're very excited. I'm very excited for what's coming up.
Thank you. The first podcast that was about myself and not what I know, not my professional advice. Maybe more myself. Yeah, yeah. I did enjoy it. Thanks so much, Nouhaila.